Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I am here for another Monday This and That video where I talk about all kinds of different topics, sometimes answering questions I get in throughout the week and whatever else I feel like talking about. So let's get to the topics of today, starting off with making a floral vinegar. Yes, I know I have all kinds of vinegar making videos, and what I'm going to do for those I know who are new that might have a lot of questions, I'm going to link you back to my most thorough and most recent video I have on making vinegar, and I talk about all the different types of things you can make your vinegars from and all the details you may need. And I'm not covering all that today. I just wanted to get this batch of vinegar going and figured I'd go ahead and do it in a this and that. So because my roses have started blooming, and I do love making a lovely rose vinegar, and any of my floral vinegars are used for washing and conditioning my hair with, and that's what I'll be doing with this. So I have honeysuckle flowers, I have the rose petals, and I also have some red clover. So all I do is I've already separated out the rose petals from the roses, and I just fill it up with the fresh herbs. And by the way, you can use dried herbs to do this. I just prefer to use fresh when I've got them coming in. One thing you can do too is if you want to get your vinegar started and you don't have a whole lot of whatever flowers or herbs or fruit peels that you want to make it out of. And remember, and you can also just mix anything together. You know, can mix banana peels, apple peels, and orange peels all together if you want. But you can just get it started with whatever you've got and then add to it each day. That's typically what we do if I'm making a banana peel vinegar and we have bananas we're working through. You're not going to want to eat all those bananas at once. And you know what happens to peels if you leave them sit too long. Even if it's just one banana peel to start with, totally fine. You can add another one either later in the day or the next day until you've got several in there. So, got this all full of my lovely flowers, and I am going to put in approximately, probably a little better than a half cup of organic cane sugar in here. Depending on what I'm making my vinegar out of, that is where I kind of get my idea of how much sugar I'm going to add. Herbs, because there's little to no sugar in most of your flowers and herbs, you're going to need more sugar for this. If you're using like whole fruit juice, like apple juice that has all the sugar already in it, you may not need to add sugar to make your vinegar. But a lot of your peels aren't going to have a lot of sugar in it, so you're going to want to increase the amount of sugar. Just know that too much sugar can cause your vinegar to never really ferment, because sugar on its own can be a preservative. However, too little sugar will yield very weak results in the end. So anyway, right here I have our own filtered rainwater. If you have to use city tap water, it's going to have chlorine in it. I recommend letting it dechlorinate for at least a day. I just realized my bread making thing is fizzing over here. I just had to release the gases. It's building up. I just fed it this morning, so it's gonna be ready sooner than usual. So, oh, by the way, if you want to see a video on that, I'll link to that video down below, how I make the bread. And no, it's not your standard sourdough. So my bread started over there, started talking to me, so now I kind of lost track of what I was saying, so I apologize. Oh, I was talking about the rainwater. If you're using city tap water, you want to let it dechlorinate, you can just, what I used to do is just put it in a jug like this and then cover it with a cloth so it wouldn't get dust and whatever in it, and let it dechlorinate for a few days. If you put it in a bigger open container, it may only take a day, just because the mouth on this is so small. I would like to give it 3 days, and that's what I would use. And even if you're using your own well water, it could have a lot of minerals in it, so you may need to filter those out before trying to use that to ferment with, because high mineral content can also, just like the chlorine and too much sugar, can prevent whatever it is you're trying to ferment from really getting started. So all I'm going to do now is top this off with my water. Okay, now I'm gonna stir that down a bit here. I always use a chopstick for this. It's easy because you can, you know, depending on how much stuff you got in there, it can work around just about anything. And then I'm gonna add a little more. I actually have more herbs in there than I usually do, but that's okay. One thing I really, really like about the rose petals is at the end product, I'll put a picture here of a finished rose vinegar. It's just such a lovely color. I get the same thing when I get my burgundy nasturtiums come in, but those make a beautiful vinegar as well, and I usually mix those with rosemary. So here's a picture of that. Sometimes I even add marshmallow flowers. And then all I do is cover it. You can use a dish rag. You want natural fabrics that breathe well. And a rubber band. You can use a coffee filter or paper towel with a rubber band or any piece of cloth. I actually made some covers for myself that I can use for this very thing. And I have a video on that I'll link to down below as well on making these. And then I just let it sit for 30 days. Now what's going to happen is when it gets really active within the next few days, it'll start pushing the liquid up and over, and it could make a mess. I usually will set this on top of some kind of crocheted something. You can use a rag, a towel. So if that happens, you got something catching it, or even a cake pan. But what you'll need to do is you'll need to then stir it down. And there'll probably be a point that you may even have to do that 2 or 3 times a day. And that part usually only lasts maybe a few days, but it could go on for a week. And so it's going to do that for about 2 weeks. It's going to bubble, and then the last 2 weeks, when it stops bubbling, the last 2 weeks is still necessary. This is where you really need to make sure you have airflow for it to then turn to vinegar, because the first 2 weeks is mostly the bacteria and yeast are converting the sugars into alcohol, and the last 2 weeks are converting the alcohol, and it needs the oxygen for this step, into vinegar, into acetic acid. So there you go. Now, so like I said, I got this. I use a pink top. When I'm using the pink top, that means this is the honeysuckle starter that I'm using to make the bread. And then back here is my finished honeysuckle wine. I didn't add any more honeysuckle. It always looks kind of brown in the video. It has it did darken, but it's not quite as brown as it may be picking up as far as the color. But now what I'm doing is I'm letting the sediments in there. I filtered out as much as I could, and I can see a nice little layer down here. And I'm going to let that sit for a few days to kind of clarify it a little bit. And then I will rack it. I might do that a couple of times. But I've come to a point where you can do that enough times that you can get a really clear wine with some things. But I usually only do it a couple of times. And if it's not really clear, I don't care. It really doesn't matter, because that's all just about appearance. Store-bought wines usually use some kind of different ways of clarifying the wines, and a lot of times it can be using eggs. I've heard of people using bentonite clay. I just don't bother taking all those extra steps, and I'm certainly want to keep it as natural as possible, and I don't care about a cloudy wine. In fact, mead is almost always cloudy, and all mead is honey wine. It's wine made from honey and water. Now, every time I've ever made mead, I've always added some kind of fruit to it, or even some flowers like rose petals and whatnot, just to add some flavor and color. I've made kiwi and pomegranate, orange spice, that was a favorite for many. And the list goes on and on. Raspberry, strawberry, etc., etc. So anyway, if you're interested in my winemaking playlist, which also includes a video on making a fruit-flavored wine, mead, I will link to that in the description box down below as well. Now, another thing, just a quick garden update. I want to let you guys know what's coming in. Usually I'm talking about what I'm dehydrating this week. I haven't really added anything new to the dehydrating list of all the different things I'm putting up, but I do have raspberries, strawberries, and currants coming in, mostly with the strawberries. I still have a bunch in the freezer. We tend to just like to eat them fresh. So mostly they're just, the grandbabies are eating them, we're eating them, etc. But the raspberries now, those are one of our favorite things to use for desserts and jams. So for those, I do like to freeze them until I'm ready to use them. So I just freeze them in quart jars. In August is Patrick's birthday, so I'll be making him some raspberry turnovers because that's one of his very favorite things. I'm planning on making some raspberry jam, and then whatever else I feel like making. Oh, I could even make a raspberry wine out of them if I wanted to. But anyway, love those raspberries. So the fruits now are starting to come in, so that's pretty exciting. Everything else is growing pretty well out there. My cucumbers not so good. I was hoping they would do better out in the open. They look like they were going to, but they're not too happy. But my tomatoes are coming along great. I got my first little ox heart tomato growing on there. So thank you, Lisa, again for those seeds. And let's see, potatoes. I've got potatoes that I should be harvesting fairly soon. I started them about a month later this year than I normally do. So some of those first ones I planted are about ready. They're getting close. And if you're new to growing potatoes, it's pretty easy. When the potato plant starts turning yellow and dying, that means it's time to harvest your potatoes. And by the way, I do plan on doing more dry canning of those potatoes. It's been nice having those jars of dry canned potatoes on hand. In fact, yesterday I cooked up a beef roast in my crock pot and some dehydrated green beans that I put up in 2018, and somehow the jar got buried to the back. Threw those in there so they could cook with the roast and get that flavor and really get cooked well and rehydrated well. And then right at the tail end, I opened up a jar of the potatoes and threw those in there so they would warm up and maybe absorb some of those juices from the roast and whatnot. Which, by the way, of course, any leftover roast gets used for making other meals. But anyway, so yeah, I plan on doing that. I'll probably dehydrate up some more as in a mashed form, and then we'll eat through some just fresh, because some will be in cold storage, which is basically our back pantry for as long as we can. But yeah, having some jarred up and ready to go, and the dehydrated mashed potatoes is great too. By the way, I'll link to that video. I'm going to have a lot. I hope I remember them all. If I forget anything, just let me know. Oh, I'm starting to get some snow pea flowers, so it won't be long before I'll be harvesting snow peas and putting them up in the form of fermenting them and also freezing them. I do both. Fermenting is great though. They're great just as a snack, but they also really work great in stir fries. And then another thing I wanted to share with you guys. So I did a video quite a few years ago on making an Asian orange chicken that I'll link to down below. Well, I had a bunch of chicken left over from some chicken breasts we had barbecued. I marinated them, we barbecued them. I used some to make a fried rice. I really wanted to make the Asian orange chicken because I hadn't made it in a long time. I don't even know if I've made it since I shot that video years ago. And so I was all excited and I was starting to put it together and realized, wait, I don't have any orange juice, because orange juice is something I usually use in it. I'm like, well, why not experiment? And so I had some passion fruit juice that I like to keep on hand for the grandbabies in the fridge. I'm like, I'll use this in place of orange juice, but I still added the orange peels to that, the powdered, dried orange peels, and that turned out really good. So I just wanted to let people know, if you go to make something like that, you're kind of looking for that sort of sweet, sour, hot kind of dish, that actually works pretty good. Just substitute the orange juice for whatever juice you've got on hand and give it a try and see what you think. And then I wanted to answer a question I've been getting on the dehydrated eggs, and I can't remember if in my how-to video on this, which of course I'll link to in the description box down below, if I talked about this, but at any rate, when I dehydrate my eggs, I always dehydrate them at 115 degrees. Now, I know that goes against what everybody else is saying is the safe way to do it, but I do it this way because I want to make sure they're not getting cooked. Now, you probably could raise that up a little bit higher, but it's important for me to keep them in a raw form so I can use them for baking. because they're going to work better in baking than if they were pre-cooked. And again, the people who freak out about the salmonella, remember, you add raw eggs to cookie dough, cake mix, etc. So that's what I'm trying to do. Well, because of that, you know, there's always people that get a little concerned about storing them this way. Well, there's two things to remember. Vacuum sealing your eggs in jars for long-term storage is going to last for years. They're not going to go rancid. I've never had any issues with the spoiling during the dehydration process. They've been great. No issues at all. But the question I got most recently was in regards to once you open the jar, the vacuum sealed jar, to start working through it, do you refrigerate it? I personally do not. I just keep these right here in this cabinet. This is the jar I'm currently working through. I've had some sit up there that I kind of forgot about for like a year or so. They were still good. There was nothing wrong with them, even though I didn't vacuum seal them between each use, nor did I refrigerate them. However, some things to consider: if your house has a tendency to get really, really hot, especially this time of year, and you don't have an air conditioner, it doesn't stay cool, well, it might be a good idea to go ahead and store it in the fridge, or to vacuum seal it between each use, which is a lot more of a hassle than just sticking it in the fridge. So that's entirely up to you. I just wanted to share that. I've never needed to do that, never had an issue. But again, sometimes you just got to go with what feels right. I realize when you're putting all that work into putting something up, you certainly don't want it to spoil on you. So just trust your gut on that. Again, especially if you live in a really warm climate, it might be the best idea if you don't want to vacuum seal between each use. And also, don't forget, the Jarred Up July collaboration is going to be starting real soon. My video as part of the collaboration is coming out on July 8th. And I'll link to City Girl Homestead and the Inquisitive Farm Wife's channels in the description box down below, so you can go check them out and subscribe, and that way stay up to date on the collaboration and the videos coming out from all the other creators that are a part of it. And don't forget to just show your love and support to everybody involved. And some people are going to have some different recipes, showing you how to can different things, etc. Mine's a little different since I don't really get into the serious canning until August, but I still think you'll find it interesting. So I hope you enjoyed my this and that for the week. Any thoughts, ideas you'd like to share, please put those in comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.